What a chase by Australia in Mohali. This is ESPN Cricinfo's Maruti Suzuki Arena presents ESPN Cricinfo Matchday. Ashton Turner is going to become a household name in Australia and certainly a name that the selectors will now consider, given that he's almost on his own at the end after a platform that was set by Peter Hanscom and Usman Khawaja sealed a 2-2 series scoreline. It's a tale all too familiar for the faithful in Mohali. They've seen Australia chase down a 300-plus total before. They've seen it yet again. 358, who thought that wouldn't be enough at half-time? It wasn't just not enough, it was, 30-40 short with the way Alex Carey and Ashton Turner have muscled down and pulled off one of the great heists in recent times in ODI cricket. Deep Das Gupta saw that innings. Brad Hodge is so proud of his halftime prediction. Let me go straight to you, Hodgie. Strange bunch of boys you've sent down here. They make a meal of a 250 chase and they make a mockery of a 360 chase.
Yeah, I mean, it's a strange game, isn't it, really? It's look, I guess conditions have certainly helped the Australians. It was a pretty good wicket in Mohali. It's generally good for batting. You know, those first two one-day games in the series were a bit slowish wickets, which probably suited India a lot more than it did the Australian unit. But no, I was sort of quietly confident that they could chase, you know, a big score, and they managed to do it. It was a tremendous, unbelievable performance by the team.
I mean, there are drills normally to how you chase big scores, Deep. One of those does not involve getting 12 for 2, losing your top two batsmen early. This is almost one of the great chases. There have been big chases in cricket before, but just your thoughts on what you've seen.
I think it was very organized, very planned, strategically. The partnership, the 192 run partnership, was so crucial between Khawaja and Hanscom, because that partnership was better than run a ball. I think that set it up. So when I looked at the score after 30, because chases like this, ideally speaking, how I look at it is you break it down into a T20 game. And when I looked at the score after 30, Australia needed around 180 odd in the 20 overs with 8 wickets in hand. And at Mohali, we've seen more often than not that kind of a total being chased down in a T20 game. I thought it was very, very well planned and well paced chase.
All right, yes, fair point. We have to give full credit to Peter Hanscom and Usman Khawaja, but as we enter our matchday match points, I can't help but start at the end, Hodgie, because Ashton James Turner, playing only his second ODI, hasn't had a list A score as high as his score today. And let's be fair, even after that platform and the position that Deep mentions Australia found themselves in, they have the ability, and we've seen in the past, they have cocked up a chase going into it deep, especially against Bumrah and Bhuvaneshwar Kumar. Did you know he was capable of this, Ashton Turner? And if you did, why didn't you tell us?
Yeah, I did actually. I wasn't surprised at all, to be honest. I've watched Ashton Turner pretty closely over the last few years, given the fact that he did his shoulder a few years ago and he couldn't bowl, so he was actually considered a true all-rounder. And you know, I watched him closely. A lot of games I commentated on 6 Perth games this year where Ashton Turner absolutely dominated. So I'm not surprised that he's brought that form over. His play against spin actually is particularly good, and that's what's probably got him into this 11. And yeah, he's a powerful unit. He's got great leadership skills and good runner between the wickets as well. So yeah, well done. I wasn't surprised at all.
Yeah, 378 runs for Ashton Turner in the Big Bash League, but they all seem mighty insignificant with due respect to the league in comparison to this kind of innings where he's won a game for his country. Deep, let's go to just how he played Bumrah. The confidence of playing Bumrah in this kind of form, even when it was needed about 9, 10 and over, he didn't slog Bumrah, did he?
No, he didn't.
Yeah.
And that was the best part about that innings, because if you look at how he played it, anything pitched up to him, he wasn't afraid to go downtown, because mind you, this ground is a little different, the dimensions. The straight boundaries are very small, the side boundaries are pretty big. So he took his chances. He played the dimensions really well. If you look at that, 28 runs in that area, the mid-on area, which obviously the kind of batsman that Ashton Turner is, his leg side will be more dominant. And I think he played the dimension really well. Anything which was pitched short, he was not afraid to pick up those gaps and pick up those 1s and 2s. So I think he paced it. He understood the dimension and played the field and the ground really well.
You almost seem to have an approach for every one of India's bowlers. And let's be fair, Haji, this is probably India's strongest bowling lineup this series, with Chahal back and Bumrah and Bhuvneshwar both playing. If you just look at that wagon wheel again, most of those runs through mid-on are for the spinners. So he had no problem taking on Kuldeep Yadav. Was picking him quite well. He didn't seem at sea on which one was turning which way. There's those 6 runs over deep fine leg that Bumrah will remember that nullifies his own 6 at the end of the innings. And there are another 6 runs through that third man region when he just steered Bumrah nicely, used the pace. He just seemed to know what he was doing against a very diverse set of bowling.
Yeah, I think that's a lot to do with the dew factor actually, because he came in at a time where dew was just starting to take an effect, and let's be honest, once the ball starts sliding onto any batsman, it really is pleasurable. There was little turn at the end, so that wasn't a concern for him. And then the dew sort of nullified the effects of Bumrah. We didn't see hardly any slow balls, as well as the knuckle balls from Bhuvaneshwar was sort of insignificant. So it was just perfectly timed by Australia. They knew that dew factor would have come in at some stage. And with wickets in hand and some quality partnerships along the way, they gave themselves an opportunity. But tremendous striking in the zones, which this ground is actually quite similar to Perth Stadium. So it would have made him feel quite comfortable being out there in the middle.
And I can just confirm that Ashton Turner is indeed the official player of the match from this game. So in spite of Shikhar Dhawan's career best 143, Peter Handscomb's memorable 100, contributions from Khawaja and Pat Cummins, they've gone with Ashton Turner, who has levelled this series towards the end 2-2. Now, we will speak of Usman Khawaja and Peter Handscomb in just a bit, but this is a massive chase, and we tend to dig out the numbers when these sorts of things happen, as ODI cricket does see its share of high-scoring chases with the way the game has gone. But what does it mean for Australia? 359 is right up top as the highest successful run chase for the Aussies in ODI cricket. You've got a 334 against England at Sydney that's been better today. And otherwise, you have to go to 310 against India at Perth a couple of years back. But what does it mean for this Australian team? I'll just ask Brad Hodge in a bit. But let's look at some more numbers as we savour this magnificent chase by Australia in this game to level the series. This is versus India. And again, it's Australia at number 1. They'd outdo Pakistan in Mohali 2007. Mohali doesn't have fond memories for India when it comes to big chases and defending big scores. But this is right up top as the highest successful chase against India in ODI cricket. We've also got one in India, and this is second only to India's own massive 362 cakewalk, shall we call it, at Jaipur, and Virat Kohli went berserk 6 years back. And this is number 2 only to that. So, wow, that is a significant achievement. What I will ask you, Haji, is what this means for this team. All the questions surrounding its batting, all the discussion that we've had about them in just the first couple of games, failing to post big scores. Yes, it was flat, and yes, dew and all that, but still 360. What does it do for the belief of this Australian team?
Well, you can't underestimate the importance of this significant victory. I mean, go to Delhi with a possible chance of taking a series on Indian home soil is remarkable, given the fact that Australia got pretty much beaten up by India on their home soil, and to lead into a World Cup with the likelihood of Smith and Warner coming back into that side, this is a tremendous boost in their confidence and play as well. We're really seeing some players step up, some big names contributing. We've been searching for centuries. Well, we've seen a few along the way in the past couple of games, so the signs are huge, and Justin Langer and his crew, his coaching crew, must be delighted at the progress that this side has made, and the beliefs as well moving forward.
I mean, almost regardless of what happens on Wednesday, even if India eventually end up winning this series, there's so much that Australia take away from this series now. When they do have that selection meeting for the World Cup, and when Smith and Warner are back in contention, it's a nice sort of environment to have. It's not come back and save the shambles that we thought Australia might be going through. All of a sudden, it's Alex Carey could very well be going to the World Cup. Peter Handscomb's made a strong case. Khawaja could be going. Ashton Turner's in contention.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, these two players will come in very much cold into an environment, that's up and running. So, yeah, huge positives for these guys. It's nice to be able to come into a side which we know that once Australia get into a tournament like the World Cup, they can win it. They've done it many times before, and they're certainly going to be dangerous. And we've just witnessed today, how dangerous an Australian side can possibly be.
I mean, even before we speak of the fifth ODI, Deep, the fact that they've come back from 2-0 down after losing both tosses in those games and very different styles of wins, have Australia already exceeded expectations that many of us might have had after what we've seen of Australia in recent times, especially against India?
Yeah, I would like to believe that. I would like to believe that, especially, listen, there was no issues with Australian bowling. It was the Australian batting that was a concern as far as I'm concerned. And if you look at their batting, and you mentioned it, both you and Haji mentioned the fact that everyone stepped up, starting from Khwaja. Sean Marsh hasn't had a great series so far. He hasn't played all the games. But his ODI record in the last 10, 12 ODI has been phenomenal. You've got Finchy who's got run. You've got obviously Ashton Turner now, Hanscom. So now when Smith and Warner are available for selection, that's going to be a pretty good headache for the Australian selectors, because as far as the bowling is concerned, I mean, I think the Australian bowling is set, and now the batting seems to be set as well. So, yeah, good news for Australian cricket, to be honest.
Okay, now let's just set up and give credit to both Peter Hanscom and Usman Khawaja. We've waited a long time in this show to actually get through to them, but that's just how the Ashton Turner innings has the impact it's had on us. Now, Hanscom and Khawaja with a partnership of 192, and that too in 30 overs. At no point did they think that they need to go slow. 6.47 is more than acceptable when you know you've got a chase of 360 and you've got some firepower after that. 12 for 2 at one stage, Haji. We've now seen 2 innings from Usman Khawaja that have been just significant, and maybe just gives him some belief too that he can belong at the ODI stage as well.
I'm particularly impressed with Usman Khawaja's play. Just the elegance and the style which he's attacked these last 2 games. He's had a pretty good strike rate as well. Last game he was up above 100. This one at 91. So yeah, look, I just like the way that he's come back into this side and filled the void. If not having going forward, going to press hard to open the batting. At the moment he's our #1 player and he deserves his spot. So I'm particularly impressed by his attitude and the way he's come out and played the game.
A word on Peter Hanscom as well before I go to Deep. I actually put out a tweet in the last game or the one before that about Peter Hanscom saying, looks a good player, Australia should consider him as the keeper option. And I saw a lot of Aussie fans actually reply saying, oh, Hanscom's rubbish and Hanscom hasn't got a run in local cricket. I don't know what the jury is out on what the perception is of Peter Hanscom from the Aussie public or Aussie cricket following. But this innings ought to give them something to think about too.
Yeah, I think, look, his technique was a big talking point, in the Australian summer. Only because it doesn't actually look fashionable. We actually don't like change. We're pretty set in our ways, cricketers. And Peter Hanscom goes about his work in a completely different manner. He was never out of form. He was just up against a pretty good Indian attack in Bumrah, Shami and Nishant Sharma. So, he had his troubles, but I think he's certainly fought back. He had a pretty good one-day series in Australia. And you see how versatile he is. He goes along at a fair click. Doesn't look like he's really needing to, play big shots, ticks it over, runs hard between the wickets. And he's easily our best player of spin, behind Steve Smith, who can't play. So, absolutely job well done from Peter Hanscom as well.
Yes, Deep, all yours.
Yeah, the point I wanted to make, actually, Hodge just made that. I think the reason and his technical issues are predominantly against the fast bowler. But even during the test matches, the way he played the spinners was very, very good, because he's very old school technique as far as batting against the spin is concerned. He uses the feet really well. He plays the sweep well. So he's a very, very good player against the spin. And I think that's one of the reasons that, he's been considered against this Indian side and for this for this tournament. And going forward in the World Cup as well, every team has got quality spinners, and I think he should be playing an important part in the World Cup as well.
Credit fully to the Australian dressing room to send him in what, the 4th over at 12 for 2. And maybe they would have had other choices, or maybe because of the situation they didn't. But we've seen Glenn Maxwell come up higher in a big chase. They could have been tempted. Maybe they could have sent in Turner. They got that one right, Deep, didn't they?
Yes, absolutely. And I think, again, Khwaja and Hanscom, I think 2 players who play the spin really well. And what I really liked was with Hanscom is he's one player who's actually picking the spinners as well, the variations, whether it's a googly or the flipper or the usual stock ball, which is a leg spin. I think he doesn't have a problem picking the leg spinners here, and that kind of helps as well because, as I mentioned, I mean, if you have to do well against especially the subcontinental sides, you need batsmen in the middle order who can play the spin well.
Well, and all that you say about Hanscom versus Pace still came in fourth over. Bhuvneshwar Kumar with his tail up with a wicket. Bumrah is with his tail up with a wicket in the new ball. So he's negotiated that phase and set up what will be a memorable win for Australia. Let's spend some time on Bhuvi, Bumrah and the rest of the Indian bowlers as well now, because we've got to figure out whether it was just the dew and what else could they have done to at least end up on the right side of a 358 run first innings score to defend. Deep, I'll start with you. We'll come to the fielding in just a bit, but just purely on bowling, was it the dew that just made everyone helpless? Did you still expect more from India's bowlers?
Yeah, the dew played a huge role. There's no two ways about it. We saw the ball not turning much when it came to the spinners, and end of the day, the key against India will always be those middle overs, the 20 overs from the spinner. And if you look at the numbers today, both the spinners put together in their 20 overs went for around 140, if I'm not wrong, 80 from Chahal and 60 odd from Kuldeep. And if you add another 5 overs from Kedar, which is another 44 runs, so 188, 190 odd runs in those 25 overs. And that was the key as far as I'm concerned in this run chase.
I don't want to... yeah.
You know, and that dew factor did play a huge role.
Okay, I don't want to be overly critical, but if the dew was going to be such a big factor, wouldn't you want to chase after winning the toss?
Yeah, that's right. But I mentioned this in the pre-match show as well. Let's not look at this game in isolation. Let's also look at it from a World Cup perspective, where you might need to bat first. You might need your bowlers to defend a total. So keep all that in mind. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't a great day for Indian bowling, and that's what it is.
Okay, what about the fielding? And that's the other bit that's now come into question. Now, there was a point towards the end, but by that, it's fair to say Australia almost had the game won anyway when Shikhar Dhawan and Kedar Jadhav had put down Ashton Turner. There are also questions on a tough chance for Rishabh Pant. There's a review that could have gone either way, perhaps in Virat Kohli's eyes, but didn't go India's way. So let's get your thoughts on that. Let me go to the review first. I think it was about 44th or 45th over Chahal's last ball of his spell. All right, Deep, I'll come to you first. Rishabh Pant misses a leg side stumping firstly. Would you call that a genuine chance or not in your book? And secondly, let's get your thoughts on the review as well.
Okay, the down the leg side stumping, yeah, it's a tough one, but you expect the keeper to do it, and that was a genuine chance. And yeah, I mean, it was a difficult one, but a genuine chance. And at that point in time, I think Ashton Turner was on 30 odd or something. Yeah. So that was the crucial, but the drop chances after that, even though the couple of catches that were dropped should have been taken, but by then the game was kind of over. But yeah, the stumping was very crucial. Coming back to the second question about the review, that was a tricky one because there was quite a few movements when you saw that snickometer, but when the ball passed the bat, there was one distinct movement on that snicko. So, you know, it's a difficult one because end of the day, the tool, the snickometer, all the tools are there to help the umpire, but not to kind of overrule. So, going by the rules, I think that was a fair call.
Okay, would you agree with that, Haji? Because it was a big moment. Rishabh Pant was very confident. Now, the snicko, the RTS didn't help his cause because there was so much movement before the ball, but there was even more exaggerated movement around the time that the ball passed the bat. Can you understand the umpire giving that not out, or did you see it differently?
I saw it very much in Australia's eyes. So it was 3 o'clock in the morning here. It was blurry anyway. So, you know, I thought a good decision by the umpire. Good for the game.
All right, brilliant. They also owed Australia, I think, the technology in this series so far after what happened with Aaron Finch last game. So there you have it, just an off day for India's bowlers, and maybe that will change very quickly when the two teams move to Delhi in a few days' time. What about our Fab 4 contest? That was staunchly in favour of Brad Hodge at half-time, but let's see where Deep does.
Let's not look at it.
Let's not look at it, says Deep. Well, there's nothing you're going to get anyway for winning other than your own pride. So you could take that up as much as you want. A 221, respectable score for Deepdas Gupta, but Jasprit Bumrah and Virat Kohli, who he would have banked on significantly, I don't think managed to get him as much as he would have liked. And what about Brad Hodges? Let me look at the striking difference in the numbers before I get a comment from either of them. Oh dear, it's not so bad. 287. Pat Cummins gets you a good 130 points. Usman Khwaja gets you a lot of points. And Chahal and KL Rahul not quite as much as you would have liked. Well done, Hodgie. Would you like to gloat?
Yeah, I will actually. I feel that I'm moving in the right direction with my selections, which is positive, and it's come down to the last game. So I was rubbish for the first two. I've made some inroads going into the series.
All right, quick word, gentlemen, on the deciding ODI. Deep, let me start with you. Moves to Delhi. I don't know whether they'll be due in that part as well. I'm assuming if it was in Mohali, it'll be in Delhi too. Just your thoughts, India approaching that game. Would you like them to stay with this 11, even though the result's not gone their way?
I would like them to stick with this playing 11, and even though they would be due and all, and I'm sure Virat, if he wins that toss, would like to chase down. That's the strength of this Indian side, I believe, and also the pitch is going to be a little different, even though the ground is kind of small at Firozshah Kotla, but the pitch does tend to stay low a bit, so that's going to be an interesting game again.
All of a sudden, if Marcus Stoinis is fit, the captain's got a bit of a situation as to who to go and say you're going to sit out, Hodgie.
Yeah, he has, and that might come down to that, that wicket-keeping position, Alex Carey or Hanscom taking the gloves. You never know, but good problems for us. I really like this, that it's come down to the final rubber. You know, it feels like it's going to be a semi-final clash. So, both teams will have to be at their best. It's going to mean a lot more for Australia to win. I know India have had their eye on the future, but win's a win, and momentum going forward is important.
All right, I'm gonna end this show right now because Arsenal have taken a 1-0 lead against Manchester United.
No.
Yeah. And also because y'all are all done with your analysis. I'm not cutting you short. Thank you very much, Brad Hodge. Get some sleep now, 3 a.m. or so in Melbourne. We'll see you again before the 5th ODI. Thank you to Deepdas Gupta as well for joining us while still covering the Syed Mushtaq Ali Trophy. All the extensive coverage after this fantastic win by Australia on ESPNcricinfo.com as well as our mobile app. And yes, for that Arsenal United game, the ESPN.in and ESPN India mobile app is your destination. We leave you now. Thank you for watching. Maruti Suzuki Arena presents ESPN Cricinfo Matchday.